Hi there, this is Jacob Nash, and this is a review of Module 9, Those Nerves. So let's first talk about phrenology. This was made by a man named Gall. As I always say, you don't need to know their first name. That's more to remember. Just remember their last name. He thought that bumps on the skull could reveal mental abilities and character traits. Well, sorry, you're wrong. So you just have to remember that, but he was wrong. Okay, localization of function. At least he was kind of right, because there are different brain regions that have certain functions, which you don't have to know those right now. But. So what is a biopsychosocial system? Well, this is just what we are, who we are, considering our biological, psychological, and social makeup. The main thing that you need to know for this module, though, is this: the neuron, whatever. Somehow that's hard for me to say. This is also known as a nerve cell, and these are the building blocks of the nervous system. Here's what it looks like, and you'll need to know the different parts. So that's the cell body, that blue part. That is really the central part, and there's a nucleus in it. We know that cells have nucleus, hopefully, but anyways. There's dendrites on the ends, and I'm not going to talk about what these things do yet. I will. Then that green thing is called an axon. The orange thing that surrounds the axon is a myelin sheath, and in between the different myelin sheaths is a node of Ranvier. And the things on the end are the axon terminals, which at the end of those are the vesicles. All right, let's see. Do you remember? What's this? That's the cell body. What are these? That's the dendrites. What's the green thing? That's an axon. What's the orange things? Myelin sheath. And what's in between those? Node of Ranvier. What's the red things? Axon terminals. And what's the things on the end of the axon terminals? That's a vesicle. Let's talk about the purposes now. Dendrites. Dendrites, listen, they receive messages from other neurons, and they are the things that conduct the impulses. The axons speak. So when the neurons receive the messages, the axons can send the messages to other neurons. The myelin sheath is insulation. It's around the axon. It protects it, and it also increases message speed. If this gets messed up, there can be multiple sclerosis, in which the immune system destroys it. That's a disorder that there can be, and this makes it no longer able to send a message. So let's say this happened. So if this were to happen to you, you had MS, then when something happens to you, let's say you someone hits you in the head with a frying pan or something, that's gonna hurt, right? But what makes it stop hurting? Well, there are things called neurotransmitters that we're gonna get to that help with these things. But if this thing, MS, makes it can make the speed slow down, so it takes longer for you to get pain relief. So you're gonna be in pain for longer. Nodes of Ranvier. These pretty much they're in between the myelin sheath sections, and it was discovered by a man named Ranvier. They also increase the speed. That's their purpose as well. An axon terminal, this turns the message into a chemical form, and it connects it to another neuron. So that's like what connects to the other dendrites of a different one. That's how they connect. So kind of think of this if you know those like blocks that are like cube, and on one end they have like a open end, on the other end they have a closed end. So let me try to draw it like say it's like you have like a block like this, and let me try to draw a dotted line. So on one end, you can stick that on something, and on the other end, that's how you connect a different one to it. That's what it's like, the dendrite and the axon terminal. The vesicles, these are where the neurotransmitters are. We're going to talk more about them in a second, that send the message. And they go on, these neurotransmitters go on a new neuron through a synaptic gap or cleft. Usually it's called gap though. And it's located on the end of the axon terminal. So never do these directly touch. They just have a small gap that's called a synaptic gap. That's how the neurons send their messages to each other, through that. So here's what I'm talking about. See how they're not touching each other? That's the synaptic gap. So sending the message. So here's just kind of what I've said. First starts out with the dendrite receiving the message. And we're going to talk about what can even start this process. But then it goes to the axon, through the terminal, through the vesicle, through the synapse, and it can repeat. Any unneeded neurotransmitter, they are reuptaken. So see these neurotransmitters, they're going on to a new one. But guess what? If there's too many, then they're like, okay, fine, go back in there. Well, how can the process start? When there's nothing going on, the neuron has a resting potential. Whenever there's a resting potential, there's always more negatives than the positives. And if you notice, the positives are outside, the negatives are inside. The neuron, and these ions, they have Na and K. And if you took chemistry, maybe you remember that that is sodium and potassium. The neuron is selectively permeable, which means that it only lets certain things in. So it's like, too bad, positives, you can't go in there. But sometimes they make an exception. If there is the threshold is broken. The threshold is that if there's ever more positives than the negatives, then that starts a stimulation. That's what the threshold is. It's like, oh, if that's what it means. If there's more positives than the negatives, then there will be a stimulation. So then the positives get let in. And if they're strong enough, then there's depolarization, or the axon sections open so the message can go through. And this is an action potential, and the message can be sent. Afterwards, there is a refractory period, which is when it goes back to normal and they're like, all right, get back out there. So the positives go back out. So that's how these messages can start. So let's talk about an inhibitor and an exciter. An inhibitor makes a neuron at rest. So it's like, all right, calm down right now. Exciter, it makes it go crazy, like, oh, activate. That kind of makes sense by what they're called. Well, let's talk about the different neurotransmitters and what they do. Some are inhibitors, some are exciters. Some are not necessarily either individually, really. But these are the ones that we're going to talk about. And we're going to talk about their name, their purpose, and if something goes wrong, because sometimes things can go wrong. So there's ACH. This neurotransmitter helps with your muscles and memory. If something goes wrong, there could be this disorder right here, and we know that that can result in a loss of memory. Sometimes if someone has that, they can forget your name, at least they might know who you are. Then dopamine, the purpose of that helps with learning and attention. So if there's too much, you can have schizophrenia. Not enough, Parkinson's. And if you know, one of those is like a little bit more hyper than the other. With Parkinson's, you have some loss of abilities. If you know Michael J. Fox, I've already showed pictures of him as examples in some of the other modules. He played Marty on Back to the Future. Well, that's what he has. It's a major struggle for him. And then serotonin, this helps with your mood and hunger. So if there's not enough desires like that, then you could have depression or bipolar disorders. And then this one is just an inhibitor, so it calms things down. Imagine if something goes wrong. If it can't be calmed down, then you can have seizure. That's not calmed down. And then glutamate. Oops. Okay, sorry. I just realized something. I had the wrong thing. GABA, that's what it actually is. GABA is an inhibitor. So one I left out was that norepinephrine. And that one is, it helps with alertness. So you can have mood issues. So sort of similar to serotonin, but sorry that I left that one out. I don't know how that happened. Now, glutamate. This is an exciter. Imagine what could happen. You could have ADHD, hard to focus. You could have migraines or seizures. All right, let's talk about some neurotransmitter wannabes that mess things up. So there's two kinds. There's agonists. These wannabes are exciters. So they make things go crazy, out of control. That's like opiates, such as morphine. If you know what that is, that can control pain. It's similar to endorphin, which is a natural thing that you have. So here's what they do. They pretend that they're a neurotransmitter. So they're like, go away. We're going to be sent from the vesicle through the synaptic gap instead. They replaced the neurotransmitters. They're like, we don't need you anymore. But when they're gone, the neurotransmitters don't go back immediately. So then there's nothing to send the message, because they're super mad about the stupid copycat wannabes. But that's not good. So that's the reason why people are addicted, and it is very difficult to get off of these types of drugs. Because think about it. They pretend they're the neurotransmitters. When it's gone, so you're no more morphine, what happens? There's nothing there to relieve the pain. No more neurotransmitters, because they replaced them. They made them mad. That is why such pain happens from withdrawals. But there's not just those. There's another kind too. Antagonists. These are inhibitors. So inhibitors, that makes things not happen, which is like paralyzing poisons such as curare. So let's see what would happen if someone got an antagonist. So let's say this guy is just, for some reason he says, I hate Vunt. Not so nice. That kind of makes Vunt mad, doesn't it? Well, Vunt might just get so mad that he decides to do this. Look at that. What's he got there? He's got an arrow. What's on it? Curare. And he shoots that guy. Oh my gosh. I'm so sorry. Now you're paralyzed. Oh, fortunately, there was an audio recording what happened.
I hate you, Vunt. I hate Kurare. I hate.
Oh, man. So sorry. So sorry, guy. Maybe you shouldn't say you hate Vunt next time. Oh, I'm sorry also, because the Module 9 questions are going to be in the next video, because I didn't feel like adding them right now. So I'm sorry about that. I will make the Module 10 video as soon as possible. But maybe I've already made it if you're watching this a lot later. So anyways, that's Module 9 for you. A little bit complicated, but you need to remember those vocab words. Remember all those things and what they do.